They called it a harmless prank for social media clout, but I classified it as attempted murder via anaphylactic shock. Waking up in the ICU, I did not cry. Instead, I demanded my laptop and began itemizing the cost of my survival. Using my sister's own live stream against her, I dismantled her life with the same cold precision I used to suture a beating heart. My name is Harper Vance. At 32 years old, I am the lead cardiothoracic surgeon at Northwood Memorial Hospital. My colleagues call me a machine, and I take that as a compliment. Machines do not make mistakes. Machines do not tremble. My hands are my life. They are insured for $5 million by a specialized firm in Zurich. I do not wash dishes. I do not open cardboard boxes. I do not engage in any activity that could risk a microfracture or callus. To the outside world, I am high maintenance. To my patients, I am the only thing standing between them and a closed casket. I stood in the center of my living room, taking a deep breath of air that had been scrubbed clean by a hospital-grade filtration system. My house is a smart home, a fortress of white minimalism and voice-activated security. There are no carpets to trap dust. There are no curtains to catch dander. Everything is glass, steel, and polished marble. I live in a bubble because outside of these walls, the world is a minefield. I suffer from severe, life-threatening allergies to latex and pollen. Exposure does not give me a rash. It shuts down my respiratory system. A simple rubber balloon is a loaded gun pointed at my head. My family finds my precautions hilarious. To my parents, I am just the cold, ungrateful daughter who thinks she is too good for them because I have a medical degree and a 7-figure bank account. They prefer my sister, Bella. Bella is 26 years old and refuses to get a real job. She is a TikToker, a career path that apparently involves humiliating people for views. She specializes in pranks. She calls them social experiments. I call them harassment. I looked down at my phone, checking my schedule. I was preparing for the most significant operation of my career. Senator Sterling was flying in next week for a heart transplant, and I was the lead surgeon. The hospital board was nervous. The press was circling. I needed absolute mental clarity. I could not afford stress. I definitely could not afford Bella. The last time I spent more than an hour with my sister, I ended up in the emergency room. She had slipped crushed peanuts into my salad dressing to test if I was faking my intolerance. As my throat closed up and I clawed at my neck, gasping for oxygen, my mother patted Bella's back and told the paramedics. It was just a little mistake. Harper is so dramatic about everything. They almost killed me, and then they blamed me for ruining dessert. Since then, I have kept my distance. My house is off limits. My life is private. I walked to the kitchen island to pour a glass of filtered water. The silence of the house was comforting. It was safe here. No surprises, no latex, no pollen, just clean, sterile order. Then, my phone buzzed against the marble countertop. I frowned. Very few people had my personal number. I picked it up, expecting a call from the hospital chief of staff about the senator's donor heart. Instead, the screen lit up with a text message from my mother, Harper. Please come over for dinner tonight. Dad is not feeling well, and Bella wants to make things right. We know you are flying to New York for your conference tomorrow. Let us have a nice meal to say goodbye and wish you luck. Just us. We promise. My thumb hovered over the delete button. My instincts, sharpened by years of diagnosing hidden pathologies, screamed that this was a bad idea. I was flying to New York in the morning for a medical conference, a final relaxing trip before the grueling surgery schedule began. I should stay here. I should pack. I should ignore them. But the desire for parental approval is a chronic condition that even a surgeon cannot excise. I let out a long, frustrated sigh. Fine. I whispered to the empty, sterile room. I typed out a reply. 7 o'clock. I have an early flight, so I cannot stay long. I put the phone down, unaware that I had just signed a waiver for my own destruction. The air inside my parents' house always smelled like pot roast and lemon polish, a cloying scent that made my throat itch. I sat at the dining table, my posture rigid, watching my mother heap mashed potatoes onto my plate. The atmosphere was unnervingly pleasant. For the first 20 minutes, Nobody criticized my career choice or made a joke about my lack of a husband. Instead, they lavished me with compliments. "You look so professional, Harper," my mother said, her eyes drifting from my face to the Hermes Birkin bag resting on the spare chair. "That bag must have cost a fortune. It is good to see you treating yourself." My father nodded, coughing into his napkin. "We are proud of you, honey. Really proud." Then there was Bella. My sister sat across from me, and for the first time in years, she did not have a ring light set up at the table. Her phone was face down. She was dressed modestly in a cashmere sweater, looking at me with wide, apologetic eyes. "I wanted to say I am sorry," Bella said softly. "About the peanuts. About everything. I was immature. I want to be a better sister." I sliced my roast beef with surgical precision. "I appreciate that." "Bella." Actually, she hesitated, biting her lip. "I am trying to pivot my content. No more pranks. I want to do high-end fashion and lifestyle videos. Classy stuff. Like you. Here it comes, I thought. The ask. "I have a brand deal for a luxury loungewear line," she continued. "They want a serene, upscale background. I was wondering if maybe I could use your garden while you're in New York. Just the garden. I promise." I put my fork down. The metal clinked against the china. "No." The word hung in the air, heavy and absolute. "My house is a sterile zone," I explained, keeping my voice level. "You know my protocols. No one is allowed on the property without going through decontamination. It is not a set for your videos." The facade of the happy family dropped instantly. My mother slammed her hand on the table. "Oh, for God's sake, Harper, it is just a backyard. You have that massive, multi-million-dollar fortress sitting empty, and you cannot let your own sister take a few pictures on the grass. It is about safety." "Mom," I said, "it is about you being selfish." My father wheezed. He leaned forward, his face gray and tired. "Look at me. Harper, my heart is not what it used to be. The doctors say I have maybe 2 years left. All I want is to see my girls getting along. Bella's trying to turn her life around. This is her last chance to make something of herself. Are you really going to ruin it because you are obsessed with germs?" Bella started to cry. It was a soft, pitiful sound. "I swear, Harper, I will not go inside. I will not bring anything allergenic. Just me and a photographer in the garden. Please, do it for Dad." I looked at my father's frail hands. I looked at Bella's tear-streaked face. I was a surgeon, trained to make decisions based on logic, not emotion. But in that dining room, I was just a daughter who wanted to be good enough. "Fine," I said, the word tasting like ash. "But there are conditions." I made them agree to strict terms. Bella was allowed in the garden area only. Absolutely no entry into the main house. No food. No latex balloons or props. If she violated a single rule, I would press trespassing charges. "Thank you." "You will not regret this," Bella beamed, wiping her eyes instantly. Later that night, before leaving for the airport, I went through my house like a security guard. I double-checked the perimeter. I engaged the biometric locks on every external door. My smart home system, which I had spent over $200,000 customizing, was set to high alert. The cameras were recording 24 hours a day to a private cloud server. I keyed in the final command on the control pad by the garage lockdown mode initiated. "Owner access only." As I sat in first class on the flight to New York, sipping sparkling water, a knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. I checked the app on my phone. The house status was secure. All sensors were green. The air filtration was running at 100% efficiency. I told myself I was being paranoid. The doors were made of reinforced steel. The windows were impact-resistant glass. Even if Bella wanted to get inside, she physically could not. My fortress was impenetrable. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep, unaware that I had just handed the keys to the barbarians at the gate. I was 30,000 feet over the Midwest when the invasion began. my security logs, which I reviewed later with the detached scrutiny of a coroner examining a crime scene, showed the convoy arriving at my gate at exactly 9 in the morning. It was not the quiet, respectful team Bella had promised. There was no single photographer and a modest rack of clothes. Instead, a fleet of vehicles blocked my driveway. Bella stepped out, followed by my parents, but they were merely the vanguard. Behind them poured a chaotic stream of influencers, a professional videography crew, and a DJ hauling massive speakers. They were not here to take photos. They were here to turn my sanctuary into a content farm for a pool party. However, they hit a wall literally. I had revoked all remote access codes the moment my flight took off. When Bella punched in the code I had given her for the garden gate, the keypad flashed red. It remained locked. Bella did not panic. She capitalized. She immediately pulled out her phone and started a live stream, tears welling up in her eyes on command. "Guys, I am literally shaking right now." She sobbed into the camera, tilting her head to catch the best lighting. My sister promised I could use her space for my big break. I spent all my savings on this production, and she locked me out. She literally ghosted me just to see me fail. Why is she so cruel? The comments section exploded with sympathy. While Bella weaponized her audience, my father took a more practical, albeit fraudulent, approach. He called a local locksmith. I watched the footage of him leaning against his car, wiping sweat from his forehead, lying through his teeth. "Yes, my daughter's out of town," he told the tradesman. "She forgot to leave the updated code, and we need to get in to water her rare orchids. They are worth thousands of dollars. They will die if we do not get in today." When the locksmith arrived, he was not convinced. He took one look at the military-grade biometric scanner on my front door and shook his head. He explained that he could not bypass a system that's sophisticated without a court order or the owner's fingerprint. That was when Bella escalated from manipulation to destruction. While the locksmith was arguing with my father, Bella walked around to the side of the house, near the kitchen patio. She picked up a heavy, decorative limestone rock from my garden border. With a glance at her cameraman to make sure he was not recording, she hurled the rock through the side window. The sound of shattering, impact-resistant glass triggered a silent alarm on my phone, but I was in airplane mode and did not see it. Bella screamed, feigning shock. "Oh my God! An accident!" she yelled, running back to the front. She dragged the bewildered locksmith to the broken window. I tripped and the statue fell. "Look, the window is broken anyway now. You have to help us. Just let us in so we can secure the house and change the lock. We cannot leave it open like this, cornered by a hysterical young woman and an elderly man clutching his chest." The locksmith relented. He manipulated the internal mechanism through the broken pane and opened the main doors. They spilled into my home like a virus entering the bloodstream. My parents walked into the living room, looking around with a mix of awe and disdain. The first thing my mother noticed was the low, steady hum of the HEPA filtration system that kept the air 99% pure. "God, that noise is annoying," she complained, rubbing her temples. "It gives me a migraine. Harper's so obsessive." She walked over to the control panel on the wall. She did not know what she was doing, but she mashed buttons until the humming stopped. The silence that followed was not peaceful. It was the sound of my safety being deactivated. Bella, meanwhile, had a different priority. She knew I had cameras. She took a roll of duct tape from the film crew's equipment bag. Systematically, she moved through the ground floor, climbing on my Italian leather furniture to reach the ceiling mounts. She taped over the lenses of the security cameras in the living room and kitchen, the ones that would have shown her bringing in the party supplies. She left only the cameras in the hallway and the patio uncovered, presumably because she thought they offered good angles for her behind-the-scenes footage. She thought she was being clever. She did not realize that by blinding the house's eyes, she was ensuring that the audio sensors would prioritize recording the sounds of her own negligence. The transformation of my home from a sterile sanctuary into a biological hazard zone happened with terrifying speed. It started when Bella checked her analytics. The classy fashion shoot was not generating enough engagement. The comment section was bored. They wanted chaos. They wanted drama. So, Bella pivoted. Okay, guys. Change of plans. Bella shouted into her phone, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. The chat wants a prank war. Let us see how much we can mess up this museum before the Wicked Witch of the West comes home. Her crew unloaded the supplies they had kept hidden in the vans. The first thing they brought in was my worst nightmare balloons. Thousands of them. They were not the foil kind that are safe for people with allergies. These were cheap, wholesale latex balloons, coated in that distinct powdery residue that screams anaphylaxis. They inflated them with electric pumps, filling my living room with a toxic cloud of rubber particles. Then came the visual effects. To make the video pop, they tossed handfuls of colored powder, glitter, and craft feathers into the air. These particulates settled into the fibers of my rugs and the vents of the air conditioning system. The dust alone would have been enough to trigger an asthma attack. But combined with the latex, the air in my home was becoming a poisonous soup. My friends from medical school used to joke that I valued my furniture more than my relationships. Watching the footage later, I saw Bella's friends eating greasy fast food and drinking cheap beer while sprawling on my white Italian leather sofas. Those sofas cost $20,000 apiece. They wiped ketchup-stained fingers on the armrests and spilled amber liquid onto the pristine white rugs. My parents, the supposed adults in the room, were oblivious. They had made themselves comfortable in the media room. My father had his feet up on the coffee table, watching a rerun of a game show, while my mother flipped through a magazine she had brought with her. They ignored the crashing sounds. They ignored the destruction. To them, as long as Bella was happy and successful, the collateral damage to my property was irrelevant. The moment that sealed Bella's fate and nearly sealed mine happened in the master bathroom. Bella wandered in, looking for props, and opened the medicine cabinet. She found my emergency kit. It was clearly labeled in red anaphylaxis emergency only. Inside were 2 EpiPens, my lifeline in case of accidental exposure. Bella pulled them out and held them up to the camera lens, grinning mischievously. Look at this, she laughed, shaking the auto-injectors. Harper is such a drama queen. She acts like she has this deadly condition, but I bet these are just vitamins or something. She just wants attention. She looked at the comments, reading them aloud. Hide them. Oh, that is savage. I love it. She looked straight into the camera, her eyes bright with the thrill of the prank. Okay, here's the challenge. I am going to hide these. When she gets home and sees the balloons, she will probably freak out and look for her little safety blanket. Let us see how long it takes her to find them. It is a courage test. She needs to toughen up. She walked out of the bathroom and shoved the life-saving medication into a trash can in the outdoor kitchen, burying it under empty beer cans. At that exact moment, 500 miles away, nature intervened. A massive blizzard had descended on New York, grounding all flights into JFK Airport. My medical conference was canceled before it even began. I stood at the check-in counter, exhausted and annoyed, and managed to secure the last seat on a flight back home. I boarded the plane, thinking about a hot shower and my clean, quiet bed. I had no idea that I was flying toward a death trap, and that the only thing standing between me and suffocation was buried in the garbage in my own backyard. It was 11 o'clock at night when the taxi dropped me off at the foot of my driveway. I was exhausted. The flight had been cramped, the turbulence relentless, and my mind was already racing with the logistical nightmare of rescheduling a canceled medical conference. All I wanted was the silence of my home, a glass of filtered water, and 8 hours of sleep in my hypoallergenic sheets. Instead, I found a carnival. The front gate, usually sealed by a magnetic lock that required a retinal scan, was standing wide open. My driveway, designed for privacy, was packed with unfamiliar cars, rusting sedans, and flashy sports cars parked haphazardly on the manicured lawn. The bass from inside the house was so loud I could feel it vibrating through the soles of my shoes as I walked toward the front door. I pushed the door open, and the first thing that hit me was not the noise, but the smell. It was a thick, chemical stench that triggered a primal alarm in my brainstem. Latex. It was the smell of cheap rubber off-gassing in a confined space. I stopped in the entryway, my hand flying to my sternum. My chest tightened instantly, a phantom hand squeezing my lungs. The air was heavy and stagnant. I realized with horror that the low hum of my industrial-grade HEPA filtration system was gone. Someone had turned it off. I stumbled into the foyer, my eyes widening at the desecration before me. My pristine, white, minimalist sanctuary had been turned into a trash heap. There were red plastic cups crushed into the marble floor, pizza boxes were stacked on the console table, and balloons, hundreds of them, bobbed against the ceiling like toxic, colorful clouds. Strangers were everywhere. Some were dancing, others were passed out on the stairs. No one noticed the homeowner standing there, pale and trembling, until a familiar voice cut through the music. Oh my God, guys, she is here. The main character has arrived. I looked up to see Bella standing on the landing of the split-level living room. She was holding her phone on a gimbal, the ring light reflecting in her eyes. She did not look afraid that I had caught her. She looked ecstatic. "Everyone get in position," she yelled to her friends. My shock turned into a cold, hard rage. I took a step forward, intending to scream, to order them out, to threaten them with the police. I opened my mouth to speak, but Bella was faster. She reached up and yanked a piece of fishing line that was rigged to the top of the archway I was passing through. I heard a mechanism click, and then the sky fell on me. It was a heavy, plastic bucket that had been balanced precariously on the doorframe. It tipped over, dumping its contents directly onto my head and shoulders. It was not just water. It was a thick, yellow sludge. I gasped, inhaling sharply in surprise, and I tasted it. Bitter, earthy, pollen. Bella had filled the bucket with water and bags of concentrated garden pollen, likely purchased from the landscaping supply store to make the slime colorful and gross for the video. For a normal person, it would have been messy and annoying. For me, it was a biological weapon. The sludge coated my hair, ran down my face, and soaked into my clothes. I stood there, frozen, as the microscopic particles invaded my eyes, my nose, and my throat. The music stopped. The room fell silent, except for the sound of Bella's laughter. It was a high, breathless sound of pure amusement. She rushed down the stairs, shoving her phone camera inches from my face to capture my reaction. "Welcome home, drama queen," Bella shouted, grinning wildly. "Look at the camera. Come on. Smile. You just got pranked." She waited for me to yell. She waited for the explosion of anger that would make her video go viral. She did not understand that I was not silent because I was angry. I was silent because my airway was already beginning to close. I tried to inhale, but it felt as if someone had poured concrete down my trachea. The reaction was not gradual. It was immediate and violent. The concentrated pollen paste coating my face was not just an irritant. To my hypersensitized immune system, it was a lethal poison. Within seconds, my tongue swelled to twice its normal size, filling my mouth and blocking the back of my throat. My lips tingled, then burned, then went numb. I crumpled to the floor. My knees hit the marble with a sickening crack that I barely felt because my brain was screaming for oxygen. I clawed at my neck, my fingernails digging into the skin, leaving red welts. It is the universal sign for choking, a signal that any human being should recognize instinctively. But Bella did not drop the phone. She moved closer, circling me like a shark smelling blood, making sure to keep my struggling form in the center of the frame. "Oh my God, look at the commitment," Bella narrated, her voice dripping with mockery. "Stop acting, Harper!" The Oscar went to the wrong person this year. "Seriously, get up!" "You are embarrassing yourself." I could not speak. I could not tell her that my bronchial tubes were constricting so tightly that not even a molecule of air could pass through. I locked eyes with her, begging, pleading for help. "Cut the act. Sis." She laughed, zooming in on my face. "It is just some flowers and water." "Did you think I used acid?" get-up survival instinct took over? I stopped looking at her and turned toward the kitchen hallway. The downstairs powder room was 20 feet away. That was where I kept the emergency kit. I knew exactly where it was: top shelf, left side, inside a red pouch, epinephrine. I needed epinephrine. I began to crawl. My limbs felt heavy, as if I were moving through deep water. My vision was starting to tunnel, the edges turning gray and fuzzy. I dragged myself across the floor, my expensive dress ruining on the sticky, alcohol-stained tiles. Every movement required a colossal effort. My heart was hammering against my ribs, beating arrhythmically, panic flooding my system with useless adrenaline that could not open my airways. I reached the bathroom. I pulled myself up using the sink, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I ripped open the mirror cabinet. My hand groped for the red pouch. It was not there. I swept my arm across the shelf, knocking bottles of expensive serum and perfume into the sink. Nothing. The shelf was empty. The realization hit me harder than the lack of oxygen. She had taken them. She had actually taken them. I collapsed again, sliding down the wall. I turned my head to look back at the living room. My parents were finally looking away from the television. My father was frowning, squinting at me. My mother stood up, a glass of wine in her hand. They saw my face. It was no longer pale. It was cyanotic, a terrifying shade of blue-purple. And then they heard the sound. It was not a scream. It was stridor, a high-pitched, rasping whistle that occurs when air tries to force its way through a blocked upper airway. It is the sound of a human being drowning on dry land. The wine glass dropped from my mother's hand and shattered. "Bella!" My mother screamed, the sound tearing through the thumping bass of the music. "Give her the medicine." "Look at her face. She is not acting." Bella froze. She looked from her phone screen to my face, and for the first time, the filter of social media dropped. She saw the bulging veins in my neck. She saw the terror in my eyes. Bella stammered, stepping back, the phone still recording in her trembling hand. I do not have them." "Where are they?" My father roared, struggling to stand up from the sofa. "I threw them in the trash outside." Bella shrieked, her voice cracking. "In the patio bin, I thought she was faking it. It was just a prank." The word prank hung in the air, grotesque and absurd. Panic erupted. The guests, realizing that they were witnessing a potential homicide, began to scramble for the exits. People shoved past each other, knocking over furniture, desperate to disassociate themselves from the disaster. But Bella did not run. She stood paralyzed, her phone dangling by her side, still live streaming to thousands of people. I lay on the floor, my body seizing, my brain was shutting down. The last thing I saw was the ceiling spinning above me, the balloons mocking me with their bright colors, and the red recording light of Bella's phone staring at me like an unblinking eye. Then, everything went black. I died on my living room floor. Technically, clinically, I was gone. My heart, overwhelmed by the systemic shock, stuttered and stopped beating. I know this not because I remember the white light, but because I reviewed the data logs later. The moment my pulse dropped to 0, the biometric sensors in my smartwatch sent a distress signal to my home's central processor. I had programmed the house for this exact scenario. The smart home AI bypassed the silence codes and initiated the medical emergency protocol. Instantly, the house woke up. Every exterior light flashed red and white to guide emergency services. The front door locks disengaged automatically. A synthesized voice called 911, transmitting my precise GPS coordinates and my medical history code: severe anaphylaxis, cardiac arrest. Crucially, the system activated the forensic recording mode. Every camera that Bella had failed to tape over, and every high-fidelity audio sensor in the walls, began recording in 4K resolution, uploading the footage directly to a secure, off-site server. Because my address was flagged in the system as the residence of a high-priority medical responder, the siren wail of the emergency medical services cut through the night air exactly 6 minutes after my heart stopped. The paramedics burst into the house, their boots slipping on the spilled beer and balloons. They found me lying in a pool of pollen-laced slime, my face unrecognizable due to the swelling. The footage of what happened next is difficult to watch. Even for a surgeon, there was no dignity in it. One paramedic, a man I had worked with on trauma cases, took shears and sliced through my $5,000 dress to expose my chest. He did not hesitate. With my veins collapsed from the shock, he had no time to find a line. He drove a needle of adrenaline straight into my chest cavity, right there on the floor, surrounded by the remnants of my sister's party. While they fought to restart my heart, the police arrived. They physically dragged my family out of the room. It is just a prank, I could hear Bella screaming on the audio recording, her voice hysterical. She is fine. Why are you hurting me? It was just a joke. My mother was sobbing, clutching my father. Do not touch us. We are her parents. She is just overreacting. A police officer, a grim-faced woman who realized exactly what was happening, shoved them out the front door. She saw Bella's phone, still propped up on a tripod, still broadcasting the scene to the world. She walked over, looked at the screen where thousands of comments were scrolling by in horror, and snatched it up. She ended the stream and bagged it as evidence. They loaded me onto the stretcher. My heart was beating again, but barely. The rhythm was chaotic, a fragile flutter. The lead paramedic radioed the hospital. Patient is unstable. Glasgow coma scale is 3. Anaphylactic shock complicated by cardiac arrest. Downtime was approximately 4 minutes. E to A is 8 minutes. The prognosis was bleak. The doctors later told me that statistically, I had an 80% chance of dying before we reached the hospital doors. By the time the ambulance pulled away, the video clip of my collapse had already been screen recorded and shared across every major platform. The hashtag TikToker kills sister was trending #1 in the country. The world had watched Bella Vance laugh as her sister suffocated, and now they were watching the police tape off my home like a murder scene. At Northwood Memorial, my own colleagues were waiting in the trauma bay. They bypassed standard protocol. My lungs were so swollen that a ventilator was useless. They made the split-second decision to put me on E, C, M, O, extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. It is a machine that pumps and oxygenates blood outside the body, doing the work that my heart and lungs could no longer do. I was hooked up to tubes and wires, a machine breathing for me, suspended in a chemical twilight between life and death. My body was broken, but my mind was intact, locked deep inside the darkness, waiting for the moment to wake up and settle the score. It took 3 days for the chemical fog to lift from my brain. When I finally opened my eyes, the world was a blur of sterile white and chrome. I recognized the rhythmic beeping of the cardiac monitor and the invasive and choking sensation of an endotracheal tube sliding down my throat. I was in the intensive care unit. My hands were loosely restrained to the bed rails, a standard precaution to keep disoriented patients from ripping out their life support. But I was not disoriented. My mind was crystal clear. The nurse noticed I was awake and rushed over to check my vitals. She saw the look in my eyes, not fear, not confusion, but a focused, icy intensity. I tapped my index finger against the plastic rail in a specific rhythm. She understood and untied my right hand. I immediately mimed the motion of writing. Within 2 hours, my personal attorney and a senior representative from my insurance firm stood by my bedside. They looked uncomfortable, shifting in their suits, expecting a weeping victim. I did not weep. I reached for the magnetic whiteboard the nurse had provided. I wrote a single sentence in block letters: I want criminal and civil prosecution. No negotiation. My lawyer read it and nodded slowly. I erased the board and wrote my next command. I instructed them to access the cloud server of my smart home system. I listed the specific timestamps they needed to pull. I wanted the footage from the kitchen showing Bella hiding the EpiPens. I wanted the audio from the living room, recording my parents laughing while I suffocated. I wanted the exterior camera footage where Bella admitted to throwing my life-saving medication into the trash. I treated the evidence collection like a surgical procedure, precise, exhaustive, and leaving no room for error. Later that afternoon, My family was allowed a brief visit. It was a mistake my doctors would not make twice. They walked in looking like the picture of performative grief. My mother was clutching a bouquet of supermarket lilies flowers loaded with pollen, which the nurse immediately intercepted and threw into the biohazard bin outside the door. My father looked pale, and Bella looked like a frightened animal, her eyes swollen from crying. They did not ask how I was feeling. They did not ask about the damage to my heart or lungs. "Harper," my mother sobbed, reaching for my hand. I pulled it away sharply. "Oh, thank God you are awake. Listen, we need to talk. The police are asking terrible questions. You have to tell them it was just a misunderstanding. Bella is terrified. She is just a kid. You cannot ruin her future over a stupid prank." Bella stepped forward, her voice trembling. "I am sorry." "Okay, I did not know it was that bad. Please tell them to drop the charges. I could go to jail. Harper, do you want your little sister to go to jail?" I looked at them. I searched for a flicker of genuine remorse, a singular concern for the fact that I had died on my living room floor. I found nothing. They were not sorry I almost died. They were sorry they were facing consequences. I felt a coldness settle in my chest, replacing the burning pain of the anaphylaxis. It was the emotional equivalent of a nerve block. I looked at my mother, then at Bella, with eyes as dead as a shark's. I did not write anything on the whiteboard for them. I simply reached for the call button clipped to my pillow and held it down. 2 hospital security guards arrived in under 30 seconds. I pointed a shaking finger at the door. My parents shouted and pleaded as they were forcibly escorted out of the ICU, their cries fading down the hallway. Once the room was quiet again, I signaled for the nurse. I did not want sleep. I wanted my laptop. She hesitated, but eventually brought my MacBook from my personal effects. I opened it, the screen glowing in the dim room. I did not open social media. I did not check my email. I opened a blank Excel spreadsheet. I typed the file name, The Invoice Project. I began to type row 1, column A, medical expenses, row 2, column A, loss of income, row 3, column A, pain and suffering. I was not just going to sue them. I was going to bill them for every second of pain, every milligram of adrenaline, and every beat my heart had missed. They wanted to play a game with my life, so I was going to make sure the price of admission was everything they owned. I did not just file a lawsuit. I performed an autopsy on my family's finances. Most people sue for negligence, but I instructed my legal team to name my parents as accessories to the crime. They had watched me die. They had lied to the locksmith to facilitate the break-in. They were not innocent bystanders. They were the getaway drivers. I sat up in my hospital bed. The hum of the ECC's machine finally gone, replaced by the quiet whir of my laptop fan. I built the claim with the same microscopic attention to detail I used when suturing a valve. Item 1 was the medical expenses. I did not round down. I included every cotton swab, every milligram of sedative, and every minute of the specialist's time. 6 days in the intensive care unit. The use of the heart-lung bypass machine. Kidney dialysis to clear the toxins from my blood caused by the shock. The total came to $450,000. Item 2 was the most expensive loss of income. I am a cardiothoracic surgeon. I do not get paid by the hour. I get paid by the life saved. My average fee is $50,000 per complex procedure. The doctors told me I would need at least 6 months of physical therapy to regain the fine motor skills in my hands. My hands are my livelihood. If they shake, people die. I did the math based on my scheduled surgeries for the next 2 quarters. The total loss was $3,500,000. Item 3 was property damage. My parents claimed I could just clean up. They did not understand biohazards. The HVAC system of my home had sucked in pounds of pollen and latex dust. It was in the vents. It was in the drywall. The entire house needed to be stripped by a specialized decontamination crew. My Italian furniture was ruined. The white marble was stained. I estimated the restoration cost at $800,000. Then came item 4. I called this the stupidity fee. Though on the legal filing, it was listed as punitive damages. This was the cost of malice. This was the price for the moment Bella decided to hide my EpiPens. I set this figure at $5 million. I sent the digital file to my lawyer with a simple note. File it in federal court. Freeze their assets immediately. Simultaneously, I forwarded a sealed packet of evidence to the district attorney. My lawyer had already been in touch with the prosecutor. We were not looking for a plea deal. We were pushing for charges of attempted murder in the 2nd degree and reckless endangerment. The evidence was irrefutable. While I was compiling my case, my family was busy trying to win the court of public opinion. My mother went on a morning talk show. I watched it on the television in my hospital room. She was wearing black, looking tearful, telling the host that it was a tragic accident and that I was confused due to the medication. Harper is just in shock. My mother told the camera, wiping away a fake tear, Bella loves her sister. She would never hurt her on purpose. We are just praying for our family to heal. I felt a cold sneer curl on my lip. I opened my cloud server and selected a specific video file. It was from the security camera in the living room, the one with the high-definition audio pickup. It showed the exact moment I was clawing at my throat on the floor. It showed Bella standing over me. I uploaded the clip to my own social media account, which I rarely used. I captioned it with 4 words. Does this look accidental? In the video, the audio was crisp. The sound of my wheezing was horrifying, a desperate, high-pitched struggle for air. And over that sound, clear as a bell, was Bella's voice. Welcome home. Drama queen smile. And then, her laughter. It was not nervous laughter. It was the cruel, mocking cackle of someone enjoying the show. I hit post. Within 10 minutes, the internet exploded. My mother's narrative crumbled instantly. I closed my laptop and leaned back against the pillows. The bleeding had stopped, but the surgery was just beginning. The trial was a media spectacle, exactly the kind of attention Bella had always craved, though the genre of her fame had shifted violently from comedy to true crime. She sat at the defense table wearing an ill-fitting gray suit that hung loosely on her frame. She looked hollow. Her influencer glow was gone, replaced by the gray pallor of a young woman facing the crushing reality of the federal penal system. My parents sat behind her, looking aged and broken. They had sold their home, their cars, and liquidated their retirement funds to hire a high-profile defense team. But all the money in the world could not erase high-definition video evidence. My lawyer stood up for his closing statement. He did not shout. He did not pace. He simply pointed at the large screen where the video of Bella laughing at my choking form was paused. Your Honor, he said, his voice cutting through the silence of the courtroom. The defense calls this a prank gone wrong. We disagree. A prank is a whoopee cushion. When you deliberately remove the life-saving medical device of a dying woman and then film her struggle for your own amusement, that is not a prank. That is a public execution. The judge was a stern woman with 30 years on the bench. She looked at Bella with undisguised revulsion. She did not buy the defense that Bella was just young and naive. She sentenced Bella to 8 years in federal prison for attempted voluntary manslaughter and reckless endangerment. My parents received 5 years of probation for their role as accessories, but the civil judgment was the true nail in the coffin. The court ordered the immediate seizure and liquidation of all their remaining assets to satisfy the $10 million judgment I had won against them. As the bailiffs moved to handcuff Bella, the composure of my family shattered. My father fell to his knees in the aisle, weeping openly. My mother reached out toward me, her hands shaking as she sobbed. Harper, please, she wailed, her voice echoing off the wood paneling. She is your sister. We are your family. Do not let them take everything. Forgive us. The courtroom went silent. The press, the jury, and the judge all turned to watch the successful surgeon, waiting for a moment of mercy. I stood up and smoothed the front of my silk blazer. I pulled on my black leather gloves, adjusting the fit over my fingers one by one with deliberate slowness. I walked past them, stopping just out of reach. I looked down at the people who had raised me, the people who had watched me suffocate and done nothing. I warned you repeatedly that I am severely allergic to toxic substances, I said, my voice steady and cold. And you people are the most toxic thing of all. I turned my back on their cries and walked out of the courtroom doors without looking back. Later that evening, I stood in the center of my living room. It was finally clean. The professional biohazard team had stripped the room down to the studs and rebuilt it. The smell of latex and pollen was gone, replaced by the reassuring, sterile scent of ozone and antiseptic. It was empty, white, and perfectly silent. I opened my laptop on the kitchen island. A notification popped up from my bank. The wire transfer from the court-ordered auction of my parents' estate had cleared. The balance was a long string of numbers, enough to ensure my financial independence for the rest of my life. I stared at the screen and smiled. It was not a smile of happiness. It was the specific, clinical satisfaction of a surgeon who has successfully excised a malignant tumor before it could kill the host. The cancer was gone. The patient would survive. I picked up my phone and dialed my executive assistant. "Get the team ready," I said into the receiver. "Schedule the heart transplant for Senator Sterling for tomorrow morning. My hands are steady. I am ready to operate." Thank you so much for listening to the story. I am really curious to know where you are tuning in from today. So please drop a comment below and let me know your city or country so we can connect. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the Mirror Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story get heard by even more people.